Hello, my name is Carl Surrey and this is a video for two Facebook groups, Fans of Serif Software and Affinity Designer and Photo Group. Now in this particular video I want to sort of make a daytime shot look like a sort of early evening just coming into nighttime, and add a sort of fake lightning bolt and then some fake rain. Now I have previously done this before for Photo Plus, which was a PC only serif product, and even that was an adaptation of various Photoshop tutorials which I sort of merged together to adapt for Photo Plus, and now I'm sort of adapting it again for Affinity Photo. So it may not end up looking quite the same, but I'm sure on the most part it will be sort of fairly adequate. May not be to everybody's taste, and I'm sure there are probably 101 different ways of getting the same result. These are just the ways that I've found worked from the adaptations that I've made, and the end result was the same image looking like this. So let us start. Now this image I got from Pixabay.com, and I will add a link to this in the description for this video. But if you're going to use your own image, you need an image that has a sort of fairly decent amount of sky available to put in the lightning bolt. And also it would also help, although it's a daytime shot, you want one that's not such an obvious daytime shot in the sense that it has lots of shadows, on the floor and on the buildings, because you wouldn't necessarily have shadows in the evening. So first thing I want to do is use the flood select tool, which you can press W on the keyboard to select that. We have a setting on new at the moment. Contiguous has been ticked, and I'm going to set the tolerance around the 10% mark. 9% will do, and then I'll just click into the sky area and it will make a fairly decent selection already. So then I will just click on add, so it will add to this selection rather than make yet another new selection, and then just click on various parts of the screen in the sky area until all the sky area has been selected. Almost there. Alright, that's pretty much all of the sky here. Now you could, if you wanted to, and if you really wanted to be ultra fussy, you could zoom in to like these tree areas and select some of the bigger gaps in the trees. But I'm not going to go too mad with that because I'll be here forever and you'll be just watching me click in little random areas. So I'm just going to do a few. I don't think it would really matter in the scheme of things if some of these are not selected. So I'll leave that for that side of the screen, and over this side I don't think there's so many. Alright, I need to zoom in a bit more for this bit here. Seems to raise the tolerance slightly. It's better. Alright, I think that will do. Now press Ctrl and 0 just to zoom out. So basically I've got pretty much all of the sky selected. Maybe a little bit down here I'm missing, but I'm not going to worry too much about that. Right, so what I want to do now is I just want to refine this selection. Now, before I do that, what I do want to say that if there are some areas I'd missed, or a selected part of the building and I didn't want it to, you can press Ctrl and Z to undo things and try again. Or you can come to the selection brush tool and either use add or subtract from the selection whatever areas you may want to sort of add or subtract to. But like I said, the next thing we want to do is to refine the selection. Now you can either do that from coming to the selection brush tool and clicking on the refine button, or you can come to select and then refine edges is an option from the select menu. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to feather the selection by roughly about 5 pixels, there or thereabouts, 4.9, that will do, just to sort of give me a slightly smoother edge. So I'll just click apply. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to press Ctrl and J, and this will duplicate this selection only into a new layer. So if I turn off the background layer, as you can see, it is only the sky area that is selected. So once I have that new layer, I'm going to press Ctrl and D to lose the margin ends of the selection area, and then I'm going to come to the adjustments and come to the hue, saturation, luminance adjustments. Now at the moment this is set on master, and I'm going to drop that down and come to the cyans, and I'm going to reduce the cyans right down to -100. I'm then going to come to the blues and drop that down to -100, which will make the sky black and white. And then I'm going to click on merge, and what that has done has merged that adjustment into the layer below it. So again, if I turn off the bottom layer, as you can see, it's just that area that has gone black and white. So the next thing I want to do is to change the blending mode of this layer. It's currently on normal, and I'm going to change it to multiply. Now that will allow some of the blues and cyans from the layer below it to come through, but it has made the sky darker. So if I just turn off this layer, that was the original, and that is now the darker sky. Now you can duplicate this particular layer again, so you can just right click on this and click duplicate, or do Ctrl and J, and that will make the sky darker still. Depending on how much darker you want the sky to be, you can do this 2-3 times. The thing you have to be careful of here is the more you do it, the more sort of obvious an outline, especially like around the tree here and other places like the roof of the building, it's starting to get a sort of thicker black line where this join of the layers is starting to show through. So I'm only going to have 2 of these layers, and once I'm happy with that, what I'm going to do is right click the top layer, and then I'm going to select merge visible, which is going to make a single combined layer at the top of these group, sort of basically covering them up, so they're no longer having any effect. The only effect it's having is this top layer here. And to this I'm going to add a vignette, so I'm going to come to filters, colors, vignette, and I'm going to have the exposure at minus 2.5. It's probably easier to type this in. Minus 2.5, and the hardness I'm going to have at 50%. Scale I'm going to have at 200, and shape I'm going to leave at 100%. So it's just making the corners really a bit darker. So I'm going to click apply to that, and then I'm going to make it just a slightly bit more darker overall, and I'm going to come to the adjustments and come to the levels adjustment, and I'm going to only move the gamma slider, and I'm going to come to the right and come to about 1.2, or as close as I can get. I could just type it in, but that would do. 1.27, just sort of help take some of the warmth out of the building that's there, and just make it a bit darker overall. And then I'm going to merge that into the layer. So now I'm going to add a new fill layer. So I come up to layer and new fill layer, or you can press F5, which is the shortcut. Now it will fill the color with whatever was currently selected, which in my case was white. But what I'm going to do is first of all I'm going to change the blend mode to multiply, and then I'm going to pick a dark blue color. You could pick whatever dark blue suits your particular image, but the ones I'm going to go for, the red was 72, the green is 103, and the blue is 255. So that is sort of that part of this process finished. I've now turned my daytime image into an early evening image. Hopefully that's the effect that I'm after. So at this point I would advise you to save where you are up to. So you can just come to File, Save As, and it will save it as a format which keeps all your file information. I'm saying doing that because we're going to sort of go off slightly to make the lightning bolts and then come back to this. So just make sure that this is safe. Save it now. Right, so what we want to do now is to come up to File and New, and you want this to be 500 by 500 pixels, and then just click OK, and then click on this icon in the middle here that says Add Pixel Layer, and then we're going to add some noise to this, and the sort of noise we want is come to Filters, Noise, Perlin Noise. Now this sort of part is a bit hit and miss as to the effect we will end up with, because as you move these sliders around you get all sorts of different effects. So it's sort of very hard to for me to suggest like a perfect place to put this, but what I am going to do, what I did with my first image is I put the octaves at 6, I put the zoom at 30, and persistence I put right up to 100, and then just clicked apply. So then I want to add another pixel layer above this one, so I'll just again click on this icon here, and then I'm going to flood fill that with black. So flood fill tool, make sure black is the foreground color, and then just click and fill that layer with black. So I now want the brush tool. You can press either B on the keyboard or just click on this icon over here, and I'm going to have hardness at 100% and the opacity at 100%, and the size is going to be around the 15 to 20 or round about that sort of area. I'm going to leave mine on 16.1, and you need to have white as your foreground color. So what we now need to do is to draw a lightning bolt. I'm sure we all have an image in our minds of what one of these would look like, but basically you just want 3 or 4 forks in the skies, and you also want to be aware of, if you're using your own image, your sort of large sky area may be on the right, so you may want it to come from the right down to the left, whereas the image I'm using, I'm going to come from the left and come down towards the right. I'm not going to go right into the corner of either direction. I'm just going to sort of stop short of that. It gives me a little bit of wiggle room when I come to place it later on. So I'm just going to draw a first line like that, and then just draw an offshoot, and then maybe another one there. Almost came too close to the edge, but I think that will be alright. So I will leave that as my lightning bolt for this version of the image, and what I need to do now is come up to filters, blur, Gaussian blur, and you just need about 1.5 pixels on the blur. Click apply, and the next thing we want again is come up to filters, distort, and displace. Now what we're going to do is displace. I'm going to click on load map from the layers beneath, so that purlin sort of cloud layer that's beneath will affect the white areas that we've painted onto this black background. So if I just click on load map from beneath, as you can see it's just broken this up quite a bit. It's currently set on 10 pixels. You can alter it in all sorts of weird and wacky ways, but I've found easier to type this in. You can either sort of go for 1 pixel. I found 1, 2 and 3 pixels are probably the best. I sort of found liked 2 pixels. Hang on, let's make this one 3. I think 3 starts to break it up a bit too much, so I think I'll try this one on 1 pixel. So it's only just starting to break up a bit. We'll see what that looks like, and then click apply. So now what you want to do is save this image, not necessarily for this particular project, but so you can use it again in the future. And if I was you at this point, I would make 3 or 4 different versions, different forks and what have you, so that if the one you use doesn't work quite the way you wanted it to do, you've got 3 or 4 different other ones that you can try, or you may want to add more than one fork of lightning. And also, if you've got 3 or 4, 5 or 6 saved, at some future date, if you want to add a lightning bolt to a different image, you had them all on your computer, because these other ones are ones that I made while I was sort of practicing this. But this is the one I'm going to use on my particular image. So once you've saved it, what you then need to do is come up to select all, or you can press Control and A, then to the edit menu and copy, or Control and C, and then come back to your original image and then edit, paste, or Control and V, and that will paste that in the top left corner of the image. So what I can do now is I can change the blending mode of this layer to screen, and what screen does, it will sort of hide any black in that layer, just leaving us with the white lightning. And then I'm going to come to the move tool, and then what you've got to do then is resize and reposition this however you want. I'm going to go with that. I think that's not too bad. Now you may think this is a bit too bright, so I'm going to make sure I'm highlighted that particular layer, and I'm going to reduce the opacity down to about 50% or so, like that. And another thing you can do is, if you want to sort of change the color of this bolt slightly, we can come to adjustment and come to lens filter. Now that would make, as it starts out as an orange color, but if I click on the actual color block itself, you can make it slightly yellow, or which might be a better option is making it a slightly blue lightning bolt. So I've got a sort of mauvey blue color here, and then I just need to merge that, and it will merge it into the pixel layer. So that is the lightning part completed. So again, you just need to save your progress at this point, and if that's all you wanted was a lightning bolt or an early evening sky, you could just save and finish at this point. But we're going to carry on and add some fake rain now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to the document menu, and the very last option is flatten, and that will reduce all of those layers down into one layer. And we're going to do this because, let me just click on his hand to get rid of that box at the moment. I'm going to increase the size of the document slightly, because in the Photoshop tutorials that I've watched on this, let's say the effect that we're going to add, as it gets near to the edges, it doesn't work very well as it does in the middle of the picture. But if you make the canvas size slightly bigger, then the areas where it doesn't work will be outside your image, and that does, so it won't matter. And then at a later date you can then crop the image back to the size you want and lose the areas that didn't work very well. Whether that's true in Affinity Photo, I really don't know, but I'm going to work on the premise that it works the same way in Affinity Photo as it did in Photoshop. So I need to increase the size of this document, so I'm going to come to Document and then Resize Canvas. And we have the Resize Canvas dialog here, and I'm going to click in the middle of the anchor points, which will mean it will resize equally around top, middle and bottom. And then rather than sort of guess or sort of do mental arithmetic in my head, I'm just going to click and put the cursor at the end where it says PX, and then I'm just going to type plus 100. And because this padlock is linked here, it will add 100 pixels to both the width and the height. So if I press return, both of those figures have changed, and I can just click resize. So it's added 100 pixels around the outside of the image. So now I've got this resized, I'm going to add a pixel layer, and again I'm going to flood fill this with black. And then I'm going to come up to Filters, Noise, and then Add Noise. Now I'm going to make sure that monochrome is ticked, and we are using Gaussian, and I'm going to have the intensity at 100%. It looks quite grainy at the moment. When I click apply though, it will lose some of its graininess. I really don't know why that happens, but it will do. So it now looks less grainy. And what we now need to do is to add a levels adjustment to this. So I'll come to Adjustment, Levels, and as you can see, all the pixels are down this end in the sort of black area of the color range, mainly because there's an awful lot of black. But what we're going to do is I'm going to bring the sliders so the as close as they can be, to get a darker image. So I'm going to bring the white slider right the way across. Now the settings I had for this was I had black at 9% and the white I had at 11, like that, and the gamma I moved to 1.964. So as you can see, the lines there, they're pretty close together, and they're just sort of using the last few pixels within that peak of pixels that are in the histogram there. So once I have got it in that position, I will click Merge and come back to the Layers panel and make sure that this layer is the one currently selected, and then I'm going to come up to Filters, Blur, and down to Motion Blur. Now I'm keeping mine at the angle of 315 because that is roughly the angle that the lightning bolt is coming in on the image. I know the rain doesn't necessarily have to fall in the same direction as the lightning bolt, but I quite like the look of it, so I'm leaving mine in that direction, but you can move yours to whichever direction you want. And I'm going to have the pixels set at 50, but again you can have lower or higher. That is quite up to you, but I will click apply. Now what I need to do is change the blending mode of this, and again, much like with the lightning bolt, we're going to use the screen, so it removes all the black from that particular layer and only the white streaks are visible. And I'm also going to reduce the opacity of this particular layer down to about 80%. Right, now this next option you don't have to do, but I think it will make it look a bit better, is to add another levels adjustment, and this time I'm just going to move the gamma slider to the right to make the overall image look a bit darker. It's more a question of your own personal taste here. I'm gonna leave it at that point, so it's pretty much on 1.5. It's like 1.497, but that is close enough. So I'll just click merge on that. So now pretty much that is the end of the tutorial, apart from cropping the image to get rid of this extra canvas which I made. Now you can either do that from the crop tool like so, and then just double clicking in the middle. I'll press Ctrl and Z and go back, or you can go back to document, resize canvas, put the anchor in the middle, and this time do -100 and then resize and get rid of the extra canvas that way. So that is the end. So this was the first one I did in my practice run, and this is the version I've just done for the video. This one I must have made slightly darker with that last levels adjustment because I didn't make a note of the settings I made, and this one's a slightly lighter one, and with two different lightning bolts. Now personally, this was the one with the lightning bolt where I made it on 1 pixel, and this is the one where I made it on 2 pixels. Now personally, I think the 2 pixel one looks, for me, slightly better. It's not as, the 1 pixel version is not, one pixel displacement is not as sort of broken up, but you may prefer that sort of version. It's all down to personal taste. And like I said, if you've made 3 or 4 different versions of lightning bolts at different settings, you have the options to pick and choose which one works best for your particular image. So really this is sort of like 3 tutorials in one. You could either just make a daytime image look like an early evening image, or you could just add a lightning bolt, or you could just add rain, or you can combine 1 or 2 or all 3 to, like I've done, to make a single image. So that is the end of this tutorial. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.